Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about the PlayStation 5 Pro update that just dropped for Cyberpunk 2077 because this is a game changer. It looks completely upgraded. I mean, we're talking practically PC level graphics, including the fact that this now runs over 60 FPS. This can actually run at 90 frames per second if your TV can handle those weird like middle frame rates. But let's talk about this update because honestly, I've been very much anticipating this patch for two separate reasons. One is the fact that it is still just crazy to kind of consider how much this game has improved over the course of the last 6 years. Like when you really remember it, I mean, this game was so busted. Cyberpunk was so basically in ruins when it originally came out. They took it off the PlayStation Store for almost an entire year, but with tons of performance updates and free patches and total overhauls and some massive DLC, the game has become maybe one of the best games ever. I mean, it's weird to even consider that. So the fact that it's getting like its 18th free update and it looks this incredible, that's cool. But it's also the fact that CD Projekt Red originally said they weren't going to bother doing a PS5 Pro update, that the Pro automatically upgrades games quite a bit, but I'm glad they changed their mind and did make this because honestly, this patch is pretty dang beefy. It's 3 separate modes, a new performance mode that goes over 60 FPS like we mentioned, a ray tracing mode, which is sort of like that balance of ray traced graphics and high frame rate, and a new ray tracing pro mode, which is basically PC level graphics with some very bad frame rate. But let's talk about all 3 modes because I've spent the last like about hour and a half, playing it, checking it out, and honestly, it looks way, way, way better. Let's get into it. I hope you're having a great day. Give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. But let's start with that performance mode. Undoubtedly, I feel like performance mode is typically what I play on. I feel like I'm one of those people that I want games to be as high a frame rate as possible, but 60 FPS is the floor. This going over 90 FPS, it actually looks really great. I will say that this is kind of trippy, even running it through my capture card, which sometimes sort of limits the frame rate visually on my TV. This looks way, way, way better, but it does just point out, I will admit that as this goes over 60 FPS, you notice the singular problem that has always existed in Cyberpunk, and I feel like you still see it here, is that pop-in. This game runs so clean, so well, everything looks so sharp that whenever stuff starts just populating in front of you, especially when you're like driving a motorcycle or something, it's still incredibly obvious. Now, for everything we're talking about today, a lot of this is being built on PSSR, that new super spectral resolution. Essentially, this is basically making it where games can look extra good because the PlayStation 5 Pro itself is basically able to put in extra frames. So it is crazy this can look absolutely so insane. It almost makes me think if they can get this to 90 frames a second as they get better with PSSR, could we see it run at maybe 120 FPS the way that some games do? There's actually a couple games now, I think like Resident Evil Village runs at 120 FPS on the PS5 Pro, and boy, does it look nutty. But let's talk about ray tracing mode. This is my favorite of the modes. I'll be honest, I recorded about 30 minutes of gameplay of all the different modes, but this was the one that was definitely the most fun and the most beautiful. This is sort of that sweet spot between performance and the ray tracing pro mode. And essentially what this does is that it gives most of the ray tracing enhancements. Now on pro mode, which we are going to get to, it adds all those PC bells and whistles where it has tons of like crazy smoke effects and like every single bit of refracted shadows, and everything looks picture perfect. Whereas ray tracing mode, just default here, this makes it where it runs at a rock solid 60 FPS, still with some of that pop in, but it just feels like the lighting, the glow of like different random tube lights and stuff, or even just how characters look, everything looks incredibly good, specifically on ray tracing mode. I decided to even get into some firefights and run from cops and stuff, and I gotta say that it just looks like that crazy sweet spot of like really ridiculously high-end visuals, like 4K, 60 FPS, crazy ray tracing, but also on top of it, very crisp. Now, ray tracing is one of those things that I feel like is becoming almost kind of controversial because so many games have done it bad. Ray tracing is obviously, it's simulated real-world world reflections. Because when you look at something in real life, obviously it's not just a straight one-to-one, right? You're not looking at it and seeing a complete copy. In fact, if there's a dirty mirror, if there's something that's just less reflective, looking at a piece of metal or something like that, there's not just complete reflections. Ray tracing is something that takes a lot of power because it's basically mirroring an entire world box. If you're looking at it and you see like a reflection of a sign in a store window, it's creating a separate copy of that sign. Ray tracing is very performance demanding, but companies are getting better at it. They're slowly sort of figuring out how to do this without basically breaking the entire game to make a stupid puddle properly show the glow of a headlight. This basic ray tracing mode, this sweet spot ray tracing mode, I feel like it does it really well where everything looks incredibly good without just being obsessively photorealistic. Now, I do want to quickly show you Ray Tracing Pro mode before I show you more Ray Tracing mode. Ray Tracing Pro mode is absolutely everything. It is skylights, it is shadow effects completely simulated, it's got emissive lighting. It only runs at 30 to 40 FPS though. If you have VRR and like something that lets you have a TV that runs at not just 30 FPS or 60 FPS, the 40 frames a second looks decent, but man, I'll be honest, it is a big step down. I played this mode last. After seeing it at 90 FPS and then 60 FPS, I probably should have started with this mode because honestly, Ray Tracing Pro mode does look absolutely incredible. Like, it simulates every single reflective surface so perfectly at 8K, it looks absolutely nutty. You know, in other games, they call it quality mode. I will say that it is just incredible to see this world. Like, Night City has already been very beautiful, but every piece of graffiti on the walls, every single, like, store sign and stuff, everything looks incredibly good. But to me, I just feel like it's too much. I almost feel like they did this just to show that it's possible. It's cool to see something that looks so close to the PC experience, but honestly, on a console. I really liked basic ray tracing mode because it does feel like that nice middle ground where we're having most of the ray tracing effects, all of the shadow effects, a lot of those cool smoke effects and all that cool like lighting breaking up stuff, but without being absolutely terrible frame rates. One thing that really tripped me out that I thought was just really interesting looking, maybe this existed in the game before, but I don't think it did, which is that when you have ray tracing modes on, you're able to walk up to people, and a lot of people in Cyberpunk very cybernetically upgraded, right? Some people have all sorts of crazy blade hands or, you know, gorilla grip bussy, but this thing what I thought was really cool is that the more cybernetic enhancements some people have, they almost seem to have this like metallic sheen to them. Like, people have a reflective layer to them if they're very metally built. I saw this bouncer lady and I could actually see reflections on her, but it's that realistic metal reflection, right? Where you see like a really shiny car or something like that. You're not seeing a reflection of the entire world. You're just seeing like a reflection of certain like light cues or shadow reflections and stuff. I honestly gotta say that this graphics patch is very big, and it's interesting that there are certain games that I hear people talk about as like forever games, something you can just play and play and play. This does make me want to play like in a fresh run of Cyberpunk. Straight up, I want to play it on that basic ray tracing mode because it looks so incredibly good. And let's be honest, I want to get my money's worth out of this very expensive PlayStation 5 Pro. Also, I've still never played Phantom Liberty, and I bought it on sale on Black Friday. All right, maybe I should play some ray tracing Phantom Liberty. Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. How do you feel about Cyberpunk 2077? How many playthroughs have you done? And do you have a PlayStation 5 Pro? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming.
Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, you know, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.